So now that we have our lower third laid out and basically designed, we're going to begin to animate it. And you can basically animate it however you want. Don't feel obligated to do the exact same thing as this tutorial, but I'm just going to begin by animating by my backplate here. So I'm going to come into my Nagi container or backplate container here. I'm going to turn on my bounding box so I can see my axis center point here. I'm going to come into my axis center point and I'm going to set my x-axis to the left, or I'm going to hit this little L button, which stands for left, and I'm going to set my Y button to B, or bottom. So you can see here now that our axis center is at the bottom. When I animate, I kind of like to work backwards, so I'm going to advance my timeline to where I want my backplate to advance to. So I know I want it to come out here, look like this at 30 fields, so I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe right here. Now it advanced my timeline, so I'm going to go backwards all the way to 0. And now what I'm going to do is actually scale. So I'm just going to use my scaling parameters here to make this grow and shrink. So I take my scaling down to 0, I hit set key, and now I have an animation on my backplate. I hit play and our Nagi or backplate animates up. Okay, so I'm just going to move up the line here, and the next container that I want to animate is my logo. So I'm just going to come into my logo here and scale this one up as well. Like I said, I like to work in reverse, so I'm just going to kind of advance my timeline out first where I want it to land. Let's say roughly about 45. I'm going to set a key. I'm then going to rewind my timeline and just scale my logo down to 0 and hit set key again. I don't pay too much attention to this number at first because I know I can always go into the stage and readjust it and make timing and speed adjustments in the stage. I'm just going to continue up in my scene tree here, and this time we're going to do the sub headlines. So first I'm going to use the green Nagi here to animate on. So I'm going to select this Nagi. I'm going to go ahead and just hide the white one for the time being by clicking the little eyeball so I don't have to see it when working with this green one. I'm going to click on the transformation editor. Again, I'm going to use my axis center to tell it where to scale up from. So this time my axis center X, I'm going to hit R or the right. I'm also going to use it to scale up from the bottom as well. So I'll hit the B button. And roughly around 35, I'll hit set a keyframe. I'll rewind my timeline. And we're just going to use the scaling here to scale it up. So I set the scaling to 0. I'm going to set another keyframe. I'm basically going to do the exact same thing for my white one. So I'm going to click on my transformation editor. I'm going to set the axis center X to the right. I'm going to set the axis center Y to the bottom. And we're going to have it animate on a little bit after our green one. So I'll just advance my timeline out to roughly 50. I'm going to set a key. I'm going to rewind my timeline to this random number of 16, and I'm just going to scale this white Nagi down as well. I'm going to hit set key. So I hit play. You can kind of see how those two animate on. I'm also going to animate my rectangle on. I'm going to come into my axis center and set the right side here. Going to set my scaling to single this time instead of locked. Again, I'm come down to my timeline. My number is at 50. I'm just going to go ahead and set keyframe. I'm going to rewind this somewhere to a number before 50, and I'm going to use my single scaling X here to scale that rectangle down. I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe. And every time you see this spoked wheel appear, you know you've set a keyframe. So I hit play. Pretty much everything is animating on at the moment. Now comes our text group. So I'm going to come into our text group, and I'm going to use our TFX plugins for this. So I'm going to come into the built-ins, the container plugins, the text effects, and we're going to use the TFX Scale for this. So here we have the TFX Scale. I'm just going to drag this down onto my headline. I'm going to rewind my timeline to 0. I'm going to set key, and I'm going to advance my progress up to 100% and set key again. Now I have an animation on my headline. And I'm just going to take this scale or text effects scale and drag it right down to my subline as well. And it takes that animation with it. So now I hit play. You can see how our two lines of text also animate on. From here, I just need to play with the settings in the text effects to get it how I want. In this particular case, I don't want it to scale up from the left side. I want it to kind of come in from the right side, so I'm going to switch my direction to opposite. I'm going to come into my other text effects scale and switch the direction to opposite as well. I'm going to hit play again, and you can see this time it kind of scales in the opposite direction. Now from here, we just really need to readjust our timing of things if you don't like it. So for instance, I kind of think the text comes on a little bit too soon so that we're seeing part of it. So what I might want to do is move my keyframes for my text a little bit. And if you want to zoom in on this stage, you can use the Z key, or you can use your middle mouse button to scroll up. If I press my middle mouse button down, we get this little crosshairs, and we can move around on the stage as well. So if I click on any spoked wheel animation, it takes me to that particular animation in the stage. I'm going to slide my keyframe out a little bit for both of these, so it's going to come on a little bit later. So we rewind, we hit play. I'm fairly satisfied with that. Now we also need to set up a stop point and a continue out animation for this, because we may need this lower third to stay on the screen for unknown amount of time, and the director may need, or the playout operator may need, the ability to take this off whenever he wants. So I'm going to come up into my director here. I'm just going to highlight it, and when I highlight it, this stop point becomes active. I'm going to click on the stop point, and here you see it adds this little stop point. Now I don't have any out animation, so I'm going to do that right now, and I'm just going to make this as easy as we can. So I'm just going to do it from the stage, and I'm going to copy each keyframe and just drag it past the stop point. So to do this, I'm going to select my first keyframe here, or my last keyframe of the scaling. I'm going to hold down the C key, click and drag this keyframe, and then I'm going to do it for the first one as well. I select it, I hold down C and drag it right. I'm going to come down to the next animation, select my keyframe, hold down C, drag it right, and I'm going to continue doing this for each keyframe. I'm not paying too much attention to the speed or where these keyframes are. I can always come back and tweak these later, but this is the quick way that we can just kind of reverse our animation by copying these keyframes like this. Like I said, at any point you can just come into the stage and kind of tweak your keyframes or animation doing it this way. So I'm going to come to my timeline here and play it out and see how it looks. And it looks like something happened to my backplate. I'm going to go back into the stage. Yep, looks like a keyframe through my fat fingering got deleted here somehow. So in this particular case, this brings up a good example. Now that a keyframe is gone, I already have a scaling here. So if I just select this here and I place my red timeline where I want, I can just add a keyframe by hitting this little button. I'm going to make sure this one is set to 0 then, so I can just come into and highlight this keyframe, and on the right hand side of the stage here, just type in 0, and you can see that it added this animation here. So again, I'm going to try and play this. We hit play and it animates on. We hit the continue button and everything animates off. I'm fairly satisfied with the way that looks. Again, you can tweak this all day if you want, change speed, change little variables here and there. However, we're going to move on. The next thing that I need to do is to actually rig this for trio. So I'm going to go into my built-ins folder. I'm going to use my control folder here, and I'm basically just going to use a control text on my headline as subline. So I'm going to drag a control text onto my headline. I'm going to click on the control text plugin. I'm going to come into the editor here. The field identifier I'm going to leave as 1. The description I'm going to leave as headline, and everything else I'm just going to keep as is. I'm going to drag another control text onto my subline. This time when I come into my control text editor, I'm just going to change the field identifier to 2 instead of 1. I'm going to leave the description the same. I'm going to leave all of these variables off. I'm not going to touch them. Now I'm pretty much set up for this, so I'm going to hit play. The very last thing that you'll need to do, and depends how your key signal is set up. So for instance, you may need to add a key signal. I'm going to come into my built-ins, into my globals, and add a key onto my very top group. This way, if I hit the key button over here and turn my full page inactive, it's going to show our key signal of the lower third. But again, this is all how your key is set up. You may be on auto key, so you may not need this key function. I'm going to turn my key off, and I'm going to save this scene. So that concludes the lower third. So that concludes the design for the lower third. Next, we're going to move on to another scene.